Tom Curran's Patriots Talk podcast is presented by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more.
Hey, what's up, you little monkeys? Welcome into Tom Curran's Patriots Talk podcast featuring Phil Perry. Day 5, or actually practice 5 of training camp for the New England Patriots. First day in pads, and Phil, we have deep concerns already about the Patriots' depth at a variety of positions. Also, we're going to hit on Zeke Elliott and the quest for a back behind Ramondre. Pop Douglas popping, Mac Jones at number 23 in the athletic QB tiers, and an overlooked Matthew Slater quote from last week. Yes, there was a long pause there. I expected Phil to jump in. He didn't. I trampolined back into the conversation. Now Phil has the floor.
There was no way you wanted me to speak at that point. Anybody who's ever listened to this podcast before knows you like to do a little rundown of all the topics described. You just threw at me the opportunity to ramble for an unbelievable amount of time.
I know.
And that's the last thing you want. So
you're absolutely perfect. This is like Brady and Branch, like anybody else who had the great kismet and telepathy, Brady and Gronk, Bird and DJ. I would even go as far as to say Marcus Smart and Jaylen Brown on that one stupid backdoor cut that they hit all the time.
Jokic and Murray.
Read me. Jokic and Murray. You read me. And you said he doesn't want me in here now.
There's no way you want me to start talking about the depth at guard right now.
Nope. And I thought you were going to launch in, and the next thing I'd be hearing about was City Sal. But anyway, Cole Strange. We got a guy who's doing a yeoman's work cleaning up in the press box here. So if it sounds like somebody's launching Rubbermaid containers everywhere, that's what's going on. Cole Strange left practice today. Phil described that situation, and then just the overall depth concerns that are now rising for Adrian Clem in his first year as the offensive line coach of these New England Patriots.
So Cole Strange got tangled up with Lawrence Guy. It was the second contact period of practice, and I would say it looked serious in the immediate aftermath because Lawrence Guy came over to make sure he was okay. He limped over to the sidelines to speak with trainers. He eventually had to get off of his feet, sit on the ground. It looked like they tested out his left knee a little bit while he was still on the field. Walked very gingerly off the field, stopped and talked to Bill Belichick briefly, then spent time in the little trainers area that they have in the what we're calling the medical shed.
Yeah, I did.
Which is a new development in the last couple of years. It's right next to the equipment shed. But there's a little trainer.
Leave that out because they'll start putting the garage door down. We won't be able to see anything in there.
Oh, all right. So
no, leave it in. Let's see if they listen. If the garage door's down, we'll know.
No, I don't want that. No, John, take that out. Seriously.
No, leave it, John.
We're taking that out.
Leave it.
Yeah, no, we're taking it out.
Can you leave all of this in? This whole exchange? Phil, this is how the sausage gets made. People love
this. Is where you lose everybody. He eventually got back on his feet and did a ton. So he did a pretty extensive workout. He was side shuffling. He was high kneeing. He was karaokeing. And got back to the field, the practice field, with his teammates with his helmet on. He just didn't practice the rest of the practice. So they dodge a bullet there, Tom, but they're missing so many bodies on the offensive line. I thought as a result of that, now I'm not sure this was why they did this, but for the first time that I can remember in covering Patriots training camp during 11-on-11 periods, during a fully padded practice, they had half of the defensive line do nothing on certain snaps.
They stayed in their stance.
They just stayed in their stance, and the offensive line on whatever side that was also did nothing. And I think that was because they were trying to limit the reps of the offensive linemen because the depth was so stressed there today.
Let's lay it out for him. Right now, the Patriots had Trent Brown, who was on the rehab field today after having practiced all the way through today with full pads on. Trent Brown, who had such a good early camp, despite our forecasts of disaster, was out of the mix. So your left tackle was down. Cole Strange goes down. At the left guard position, David Andrews, stalwart in the middle, but Jake Andrews, the rookie, missed practice beginning Friday, and he's still out. Then we had Mike Onwenu, who's got leg injury and is still coming back from that. He has yet to practice. Calvin Anderson, free agent, offensive lineman brought over from Denver, has yet to practice. And Connor McDermott was at right tackle. So fill me in on the guys who I didn't mention who are playing positions on the offensive line.
Well, they also were without Chasen Hines for a chunk of today.
Correct. LSU 6th rounder.
From 2 years ago. And it looked like Bill Murray might have gotten a little dinged up on the very last snap of practice. So something to keep an eye on as well, because he had been in the Micah Wenu spot as the team's top right guard through camp. So the situation basically resulted in this. The offensive line picture was in front of Mac Jones, going from right tackle to left. McDermott, Bill Murray, Andrews, Antonio Mafi, 5th round pick out of UCLA, and Riley Reif. That's not what you're hoping to roll out there week 1 of the regular season. I'm not saying they will, but an injury or two to that group, when you already have a massive question mark, in my opinion, at right tackle, is cause for concern.
Here's why this sucks. Mac needs more protection than the top tier quarterbacks around the league. I would say even, whether it's Jimmy Garoppolo or Daniel Jones, or forget Mahomes, forget Burrow, forget a lot of those guys who can throw off platform, have stronger arms, and move and throw. Mac needs protection. He needs time to be able to evaluate. He needs to have time for his receivers to uncover. With a patchwork offensive line, he is hurt more than most. He's got a great brain. He'll be able to diagnose things and get the ball out quickly, but then comes the catch-22. Well, he gets the ball out quickly, but he doesn't have a damn receiver out there who uncovers quickly. Plus, you have a first-year offensive line coach. So all of those reasons are why, despite the fact the Patriots are trying to cleanse their palate and move forward nicely into 2023 with a new attitude, their personnel is going to squeeze them in different places. And that's not only offensive line, Phil. Running back, we can talk about the depth there. Tight end, we don't even talk about it because Hunter Henry and Mike Gesicki are out there all the time. But then who's the next one? And is Gesicki even a tight end? You have like one true tight end on the friggin' team. Wide receiver, we've talked about the depth there. It's been okay so far. Even quarterback. I don't think Bailey Zappi is what you would call a playoff caliber backup quarterback. For a playoff caliber team, when you have a backup quarterback, you want somebody who can come in and win some games for you, not just 10-2, get it around the block and make, score 10 points. But they're not that. And I'm not even sure, Matt. Anyway, it's just a woeful array of talent to me that tops out on the offensive side with some players who are pretty good. And that's why it sucks. And that's why this depth is just really unnerving.
I guess you could look at it this way. Like, if you're looking at the interior of the offensive line, you're saying to yourself, well, thank God, I guess they drafted 3 guards in the middle rounds. Although City So has been playing exclusively at tackle, from what I can tell, at right tackle. But yeah, Tom, I mean, they're deep defensively, I think.
Yep.
Almost across positions, maybe outside of like inside linebacker, but even there, you could look at Bentley and Tavai as their top 2 guys. And Mapu has been mixing in there, the 3rd round pick from this year. But they've got corners, they've got defensive linemen, they've got safeties. But offensively, where we know, and this is why I think it's disappointing if you're a Patriots fan, is we know Bill Belichick values depth. And maybe they will eventually be deeper than we're giving them credit for. If Antonio Mafi has the camp of all camps and he's just burying people on a weekly basis in these preseason games, then we'll say, all right, maybe you'll have people on the radio say, calling for Michael Wenu to be traded for a receiver or something, because, if that's the case. So there's a chance for other players to emerge. But a day like today, when the pads first come on, and where somebody like Christian Barmore, who's having a really good camp, looks unblockable, it's hard not to see that and say, boy, are they going to have real problems on the offensive line this year?
That's what sucks. July 31st, last year at this time, we were looking at the group and saying, holy crap, what are they trying to do? Who's in charge of the offense? What are they doing over there? And this year, we're not doing that. And honestly, this practice, despite what Phil said about them having to bench half the line mid-play and not do anything, stuff didn't look horrible. The offense looks like it's doing what it's supposed to, even if the tempo I'm noticing so far in between downs and the speed of the practice is not high tempo yet. It doesn't look like an embarrassment, but it's July 31st, and you're already concerned not just about offensive line depth, but running back depth, wide receiver depth, tight end depth, and quarterback depth. That's everything. That's all five for Crochet. Let's talk about the running back depth, because Ramondre Stevenson wasn't out there. Ty Montgomery continues to not be out there. Ezekiel Elliott spent a couple of days in Boston this weekend, photographed with Mac Jones at the Seaport, having a delightful time. Now, the Patriots are at 90. They're going to have to release somebody if they're going to bring Ezekiel Elliott in. There should really be no pause. At this point, in my years covering the team, there would already be some running back somewhere who had been imported, and somebody would have been untethered. The Ross Ventrone move.
Now you're pausing long enough that I am feeling like I should say something.
Well, I can tell your lips aren't moving. I'm like, okay, I'll throw in my next thought while he's waiting.
Yes, go get a running back. I mean, it's silly that they're going through a fully padded practice with only 3. And I say that because it felt like today was a scheduled off day, maybe, for Ramondre Stevenson. We didn't see him get hurt on Sunday. I was out there for Sunday's practice. He looked fine. He was active. I caught a bunch of passes from Mac Jones. And then they get out there in pads, and you have 3 backs available to you. And one of them is J.J. Taylor, who's, I think sort of a niche player if he's going to even make the team. And Pierre Strong, I'm not even sure Tom is built for between the tackle duties. So Kevin Harris got a lot of work, and I give him credit. He was in my stock up category on my stock watch piece today, because I thought he ran pretty well, and he is pretty big, and it looks like he could be fine between the tackles, but you need a couple more options, I would think, just to get through some of these practices. And yep. I don't know if you can trust Kevin Harris. I mean, he ran for basically 3 yards a carry last year. And maybe he'll get better. He looks a little thinner. He's still a pretty big guy, but he looks a little thinner. So maybe he's got a little bit more explosion to him in year 2. But if you have any questions there, because you can't rely on Ramondre Stevenson to do absolutely everything, it's incumbent upon you, whether it's Fournette or Elliott or someone with some experience who can give you a little bit of everything, who knows how to pass protect, who understands NFL pass protection schemes, who can catch the football if it's thrown his way, who can be a legitimate starting level running back if Ramondre Stevenson gets hurt, because guys at this position get hurt. That's what you need. I don't know if it's Kevin Harris yet. Again, I thought he had a good practice today, but I wouldn't be waiting around if I'm the Patriots. I'd be trying to get one of these guys that's the veteran that's available.
Yeah, I wonder what Ty Montgomery's situation is right now, because that's the hard thing too, I guess. If we're saying, hey, I'll go get somebody, and they think Ty Montgomery's going to be back in 15 minutes, it's hard for them to pitch. I know, I'm just saying it's hard for them to pitch a running back coming in that, yeah, come on in, sign this contract, move in. What are you squinting about? I'm not saying something that's really half.
Why would we be holding off of signing Ezekiel Elliott because Ty Montgomery is coming right back? I'm just saying
he
hasn't had more than 100.
The issue was there before. You asked me the question. I'm going to answer it, Phil, for God's sake. The issue, you're correct, was there before Ty Montgomery even got hurt. Now it's exacerbated. So yes, you're correct in that. And I've decided now that when I'm done talking, I'm going to say over. Over.
Thank you. Yeah, Montgomery to me is a nice piece. And if they want someone who is in that James White role, give it to him. But don't adjust your offer, because this is going to come down to money, whether it's Elliott or Dalvin Cook, who's still unsigned, or Fournette or anybody else. Don't adjust your offer based on Ty Montgomery's health. That's all I would say.
You're right.
And I like him as a
I
player.
just threw it out there for God's sake. Over.
He's just not a running back. I don't view him that way. So it's Harris, it's Ramondre, and I'm not sure you like that situation if you're the Patriots.
No,
but clearly they haven't done anything yet.
They are so absolutely puzzling with their personnel decisions. They really are. You're giving bumps to Devontae Parker, who didn't do much last year. You're ostracizing Kendrick Bourne, who was good a year ago, previous to last year. You don't want anything to do with some guys. You want everything to do with others. It's just, they're so inconsistent. Over.
It's the willingness to lack depth at a position. And I guess it's the running back position that really stands out to me most. Because if Bill Belichick were on with us right now, he would say, well, we drafted 3 guards in the spring. What do you want me to do? Like, how much more depth do you want? So maybe that's not the position to hammer him for. I would say it's running back and it's tackle. Tackle's the other one. For Connor McDermott and Riley Reif to be potentially your starting tackles, if the oft unavailable Trent Brown happens to miss time, which you should be planning on, that's very, very low on the rankings list in terms of NFL tackle tandems, if that's what they have to roll out in the regular season.
And again, let's look at that. And we could say, oh, victim of circumstance. You can't control it. Trent Brown's good sometimes. And well, they drafted a guy in 2018 who seemed really good and got progressively worse as time passed here in Isaiah Wynn. In the program, went from happy, capable, if injury prone player to completely a mess inside the Patriots program and had to be released. Yodnik Adjust, a 3rd round pick, had to be let go after the end of after last year. There's other guys in there too, but swings and misses in the draft leave you in this particular situation. And then the lack of urgency in the offseason to address the tackle position. When I remember looking at it last year, and I was saying tackle was my biggest concern going into last year because of the injury problems. I didn't think Isaiah Wynn was going to turn into a complete scatterbrain out there, which he seemed to. But it's just an unaddressed position. And as we discussed in March, and we're not going to belabor it now in August, there were guys who were available at the tackle position that they might not have been Leon Gray, but for God's sake, they could be a representative option at the position. It'd be okay if Connor McDermott and Riley Reif were out there because a good player got hurt, but they're not. They're out there by friggin' default.
They're good. I would say they're best suited to be 3rd and 4th tackles. And today they were 1 and 2. And that is, I would say, in terms of your team building approach and where you're at on the timeline, understanding that there aren't capable bodies just available, generally speaking, that to me is the concern. Trent Brown, I bet, is going to be out there tomorrow. It looked just like a day off today. Mm-hmm. So suddenly things look 50% better. But he misses time. Maybe this is a good opportunity for me to point out that our friend Mike Tralia, who now covers the Cincinnati Bengals, formerly of WEEI.com, is saying that Jonah Williams is a tackle in Cincinnati, who's certainly a starting caliber tackle, is working with the twos as we speak, as we record this podcast. And so maybe there's a trade possibility there. That
sounds like a candidate
the Patriots would pursue. Yes.
Phil, let me roll through the roster just a little bit because a lot of our podcast friends have specific people they want to know about, and we both pay a lot of attention. Go through some of this year's draft picks. Kayshon Boutte. Seen anything yet? This is the Codger. He bothers me about it all the time. How's Boutte look?
Boutte had his best moment of camp thus far today. He missed Sunday's practice, but was back on Monday and made a nice twisting, leaping catch along the sideline. during 11-on-11 drills.
Otherwise,
He's non-existent. That literally is the first play I've seen him make in a competitive period.
JJ Taylor, people like him.
People do like him, but I hope that they don't have their hopes up about him making this roster.
Because of a man named?
I don't think it's because of Pete Strong.
No, Demario Douglas.
Oh.
Kind of. I mean, I know he's not a running back necessarily, but he fulfills the same role that JJ Taylor would. He's the water bug.
Well, I would see JJ Taylor as potentially as like Dion Lewis, whereas I see Demario Douglas as a slot receiver.
I'm just saying they don't want small people anymore.
It seems
that way. Don't want no
short
short people around here.
Doesn't it seem that way?
Yeah.
Why is that? They've had some pretty good short players over the years.
I don't know.
Is it because they get hurt?
I guess their patience ran short. Over. Demario Douglas, Phil. You love him like a son.
He's been great. He's been as advertised, in my opinion, and as someone who has been doing some of the advertising since they drafted him, I am surprised at just how consistent he's been, because through the 4 days of what was an extension of passing camp, an extension of OTAs, he was really good. He separates, he catches everything that is within his catch radius. But then today with the pads on, Tom, he stood out as a blocker, and he's moving people on these bubble screens, and he is getting people so excited that they're essentially whooping it up as if the guy made a game-winning play 20 minutes into practice because he moved to defensive back on a bubble screen. Now, I know that probably sounds underwhelming, but if you're a coach or you're a player and you're in the middle of that drill, you get excited when you see somebody execute the way he did it. And it happened on more than one occasion. So he's checking every box. He's undersized, but he's catching everything. He's getting open. He understands where he needs to be. They're throwing him the ball. They're giving it to him on end arounds. And then today, when the pads come on, he can block too. There's no question. I mean, he's been on my 53-man projections. I've done a couple, did one after the draft, did one before camp. He's not moving. He's going to be, in my opinion, as things stand right now, he's on the roster.
Marte Mapu, Phil. I'm surprised to see him running with the ones, even though he's got the red non-contact jersey. And they were in pads today. He is coming back from a pec injury, but he is still mixing in with the ones at the linebacker level here and there.
Yeah, and especially I would say in sub situations. So when it's third down or hurry up, which they worked a lot of on Sunday, he's out there and he's right in the middle of the defense. And you can't miss him because of that red jersey. But it's clear they like him as it looks like, I should say, as a cover backs out of the backfield, third down, use him in a variety of different ways type of player. It was interesting Sunday. I really kind of tried to focus in on Mapu for a while because he's out there early at the linebacker level on third downs and in sub situations. And then minutes later, he'll be out there with the third team as a deep safety and working at safety with, the backups and the third string guys. So they're putting a lot on his plate and just seeing how much he can handle. And so I think, all signs are pointing in the right direction for him as well. I've been somebody who's tried to pump the brakes a little bit on him because to me, he is a little bit of a tweener until he proves otherwise. I don't think they're ever going to want him at the second level on first down, but you don't have to be that anymore in today's game to be a good player at that position.
Phil tried to pump my brakes earlier today when I looked at him and said, you know what? I think Christian Gonzalez is the best player on the team. And I hear you folks out there right now reacting to this and saying, it's July 31st, idiot. And I understand what you're saying, but he already executes at his position better than, say, whoever. I mean, he is that talented. So he's the best player on the team. I think
you're trying to do.
He's the best player on the team. Over. Phil.
Sorry, you didn't say the over. I missed it. I think what you're trying to do is you're trying to my affinity for Christian Gonzalez because I love the pick when it happened. I called it a dream scenario if he fell in the draft before the draft. There was like, I mean, I'm looking at the relative athletic score, and I'm saying, boy, look at Patrick Surtain, look at JC Horn, and now you're trying to come over the top and say not only is he going to be a good player, which is what I've been saying, but you're saying he's the best player on the team.
Yeah. Way to make it all about you. Over.
I'm saying I'm making it all about me only because I feel like you're making it about you. I'm trying to cut you off at the pass. I am preemptively striking your selfish take with my selfish take.
For those of you who are only on the pod listening to it, you're missing out on my absolute tribute haircut to Pee Wee Herman I have going on. I got an extra short haircut the other day, and I wore my one of my safari hats, and I got this kind of like a unicorn point in the front. And I look like either Ed Grimley, who only some of you people will remember. Phil, I'll show you the video, and you'll say, I wish I knew who Ed Grimley was before this. Or Pee Wee Herman. All right. Phil was telling me about his Pee Wee Herman pole doll that he had when he was a little kid. Pole doll. Yep, Pee Wee Herman pole doll. Over. Hey, what's up, everybody? Listen, I want to encourage you to go and take your first swing at betting MLB on FanDuel and get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets. That's up to $200. And that's a lot, because just betting $20 means you'll land $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. That's $200 that you can spend betting everything from the money line to the over-under to who you think is going to hit the first home run. All on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. There's no better place to bet on MLB than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So sign up today and visit FanDuel.com/NSBO to get up to $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/NSBO. FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Hope is here. GamblingHelplineMA.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support, Massachusetts. Call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369 New York. 21 plus in present and select states. FanDuel is offering online sports wagering in Kansas under an agreement with Kansas Star Casino LLC. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit FanDuel.com/RG in Colorado, Iowa, Michigan, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Illinois, Tennessee, or Virginia. 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT-STEP to 53342 in Arizona. 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut. 1-800-9-WITH-IT in Indiana. 1-800-522-4700 or visit ksgamblinghelp.com in Kansas. 1-877-770-STOP in Louisiana. Visit www.mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. 1-800-522-4700 in Wyoming or visit www.1800gambler.net in West Virginia.
Okay. Mac Jones was a topic of discussion today on NFL radio. Pat Curran, our friend, and also another friend of ours, Jim Miller, speaking with Patriots head coach Bill Belichick about quarterbacks in general, Mac Jones in particular. And finally, we got maybe a little bit of movement from Bill, maybe, on Mac Jones kind of being the starter, even though at the end he says something about competing.
Yeah, Max had a good offseason. He was one of our offseason award winners. First in, last out of the building, really does a good job of, knowing, being on top of everything that we're doing so he can lead from the quarterback position in terms of play calling and those type of things. Zappy's way ahead of where he was last year. Obviously, Pat, you talked about that. Rookie going into his second year, and it's been good to work with McSorley. He has a little bit of game experience, a little bit of NFL experience, but is still a young player. So, we'll see how those guys do when the real football starts. Pat come on, there's a little more pass rush and so forth. But they can all run the offense efficiently. They're all smart. They all handle what we do, so that everybody else can operate efficiently. So we'll give them a chance to compete and see how it goes.
So that's Bill's commentary. Meanwhile, The Athletic, Mike Sando, a good friend of ours, been on the pod here with us, really spends a lot of time speaking to as many general managers, head coaches, executives, players as he can to try and get kind of a collective opinion from around the league on different topics. And he often does it with quarterbacks. So I want you to go to The Athletic and look at his quarterback tiers. It's not really a ranking of the quarterbacks, which I love. It's more of voting on, okay, this is a tier 1 player, can win games on his own, superior talent. That would define a tier 1 player. This is how Mike does the voting. And all the 50 or so voters would vote, okay, he's a tier 1. The only unanimous guy was Patrick Mahomes. Every single respondent said that Patrick Mahomes is an elite, transcendent player who can win games on his own in a unique way. Second in the NFL at the quarterback position in tier 1 was Joe Burrow, joined by, I believe, Aaron Rodgers, Josh Allen. Justin Herbert was at the bottom of tier 1. So some people voted for him as a tier 2 player. Outstanding player, might have a hole in his game, but he can win games for you with his arm for a while, might have another ability that mitigates any limitations that he might have. So you found Jalen Hurts, you found Lamar Jackson, Trevor Lawrence. Phil, give me some others because I don't have the thing open.
Lawrence, Dak Prescott, Matthew Stafford, Deshaun Watson, Kirk Cousins. That rounded out tier 2.
Okay. Fair, right? Ish. That's what I would call. I agree. Matt Stafford might be closer to the bottom of tier 2 at this point, but go ahead.
Yeah, tier 2 quarterback can carry his team sometimes, but not as consistently as tier 1. He can handle pure passing situations in doses.
I like that.
And or possesses other dimensions that are special enough to elevate him above tier 3.
See, I don't think Lawrence belongs there yet.
Ooh, but you think Kirk Cousins does?
I think Kirk Cousins could get in a shootout or be at the end of a game and say, we need you to throw for 430 today, and he could do it. Not on call, but he could. I don't think I've seen Trevor Lawrence do that yet, but that's all.
Trevor Lawrence had some ridiculous game where did he throw 5
Didn't they come back?
touchdowns? Yeah, he threw
That's the
some.
last time he was on the field they did it, but be that as it may.
Anyway, yeah, I like Lawrence being in tier 2, and I think Cousins does deserve to be there as well because he has put up some ridiculous numbers for a long time now, and there's something to be said for consistency, even though he comes up a lot here in New England because I think he has a lot of Jonesian qualities to his game, or vice versa, if you want to flip it around. Neither guy is special physically.
No.
And so in theory, with good coaching, which I think Cousins has had, and good weapons, which Cousins certainly has had, can you get the same or something similar out of Mac Jones? I think you could. I think unfortunately for the Patriots, they don't have the weaponry to really allow you to find that out this year.
Who's tier 3? This is where the lack of weaponry is going to shine because I think the tier 3 definition needs a lot of help, basically.
Needs a heavier running game and or defensive component to win. A lower volume drop back passing offense suits him best. It starts with Kyler Murray. Then you go to Derek Carr, Jared Goff, Russell Wilson, Tua, Jimmy Garoppolo, Daniel Jones, Geno Smith, Justin Fields, Ryan Tannehill, and Mac Jones is the last one listed. And you're right, Tom. It sounds like Mike didn't ask these executives, coaches, etc., to rank these players. They're just giving him tiers. But then the Athletic does rank them. So there must be something based on the voting.
Click on Mac Jones, for instance, and you'll see how the voting went. I think it was 34 tier 3 votes.
Yes, there you go. 37 tier 3 votes, 13 tier 4 votes. So he's right on the cusp.
Go up to who the hell was ahead of him there? Ryan Tannehill.
Tannehill was 42 tier 3 votes, 1 tier 2 vote, which is interesting, 2 tier 5 votes, and 5 tier 4 votes. So people are all over the map on Tannehill.
So that's interesting. Like there's 2 people who think that Mac Jones is better than Tannehill, for instance, but they're not saying that. But there's 2 people who think Tannehill sucks. One people think he's pretty friggin' good. So if you look at that's how the tiers are broken down. I think that Mike just adds up the numbers there simply. I can't put Mac ahead of Kyler Murray yet. I think by the end of their careers, they're going to be closer. I can't yet put him ahead of Derek Carr based on last year, even though I'd probably rather have the balls of Mac Jones, even though people think he's a little soft. I can put him ahead of Jimmy. I can put him eyeball to eyeball, probably ahead of Tua. I have to put him ahead of Daniel Jones. I watched him for a week here. He was a better player than Daniel Jones. Who else am I missing there? Justin Fields. I put him ahead of Justin Fields. How about you?
Gino.
I don't put him ahead of Goff. I do not put him ahead of Goff.
And this is where it's so hard to separate a quarterback from his situation, right? I mean, if Jared Goff is in the Patriots system last year, or Tua, or Jimmy Garoppolo, I think they all have relatively similar years. And I look at somebody like Garoppolo who can't stay on the field. And even when he has, he's been very limited. And essentially the ball taken out of his hands by one of the best offensive play callers in the modern NFL in the most critical junctures of their season on their way to a Super Bowl. And I just can't, in good conscience, put him ahead of Mac Jones, who I would do, and I would do that just out of the potential that I think Mac Jones has alone. And I think that's what's sort of missing from this conversation. I don't fault people for it, but there's still so much projection involved with Mac Jones that it's got to be really hard for these executives to say, well, yeah, I'd rather have Mac Jones than Jimmy Garoppolo. Jimmy Garoppolo went to a Super Bowl a couple of years ago, and that's what they're all thinking.
Two cool comments in the Mac Jones write-up there. One that really echoes how you and I have felt, but then there's another one that's a little bit more damning that's worth exploring for just a quick second, and then we'll move on. It's the one where the executive says, I still kind of feel about him the same way he did when he came out. He just doesn't do things. Can you read that one?
Yeah, the quote is, if you look at the guys in tier 1 and 2, for the most part, they have an ability to create off platform. And that has always been my issue with Mac, even coming out. I thought coming out, his best case scenario was you were going to get a Kirk Cousins type player. And that wasn't an uncommon comparison even before the draft. And I remember making that argument on our shows, which was, is Mac Jones going to blow you away with what he does physically? Is he going to give you what Trey Lance could give you, for instance? Does he have that kind of ceiling? Probably not. But if you can get Kirk Cousins on a rookie contract, if you can put him in the kind of situation that really amplifies the skills that he does bring to the table, and he's as cheap as he will be on a rookie contract, that is 100% worth the 15th overall pick in the draft. So people just haven't moved off that spot. And I understand why.
It's funny because the presumption of getting Kirk Cousins in Bill Belichick's system with Bill Belichick's know-how, Bill Belichick's defense and situational savvy in 2021, we all felt kind of the same way Josh McDaniels and Bill Belichick reportedly felt when Seth Wickersham did his story. We can kind of win with anybody. We can be a good team with anybody. So if you told me Kirk Cousins was coming here, I said, that's going to be a guy who's going to play in conference championship games and Super Bowls because Bill will get him there. Now the bloom is off the rose a bit with Bill and with the DNA of the 2020s Patriots. It's altered, it's changed, it's not the same. So it's harder to envision Mac Jones or Kirk Cousins, or even if you threw Joe Burrow and he materialized here under center tomorrow with Connor McDermott and Bill Murray in front of him and Demario Douglas as maybe your most scintillating offensive threat, you might still be saying, okay, they're not the Patriots anymore, aside from the helmets and the jerseys. Over.
Yeah, I can't imagine how many of these quarterbacks would have great seasons with the Patriots as currently constituted. Can you? I mean, you mentioned Burrow. Burrow has played behind bad offensive lines before, but he's always had T. Higgins. In the last couple of years, he's had Jamar Chase. He's always had people to throw to. You know, Josh Allen, he was not a good quarterback until he got some people to throw to, Cole Beasley and Stephon Diggs. And wouldn't you know it, he becomes one of the best quarterbacks in football. I'm having a hard time understanding, and this has been a long-held question of mine. But how can you expect in a league where elite quarterback play is what wins? How can you expect your guy to get there unless he has elite people around him? And I think that's how you'd have to view the top options to pass to for most of, if not all, of these quarterbacks in both tier 1 and tier 2. You know, they all, the one who stands out to me as being in tier 2, and he's probably been in tier 2 for a while, and maybe he was in tier 1 in the recent past. The one guy who really hasn't been helped with his weapons, and they've gone a long way in rectifying that this offseason, has been Lamar Jackson, who's arguably the most singularly gifted physically quarterback we've ever seen. And a guy who can carry an offense all on his own. And so what kinds of results are you expecting from your quarterback who needs help, as most do, if you don't give him that help?
Look at Russell Wilson. I mean, he was propped up by an outstanding defense, and he had a great arm, and he was an unbelievable. He didn't have great receivers around him. He had pretty much pedestrian receivers like Max had, although with DK Metcalf. But the point is, I would never consider Russell Wilson a great passer, but there was a period of time, and he's now in tier 3. There was a period of time when he was one of the scariest players in football with the ball in his hands. So you go, oh, okay, well, he's 98 yards away and there's 2 minutes left. That doesn't matter. They're going to score. There was a Minnesota Vikings primetime game in which the Vikings gambled for a touchdown, I think, when they could have gone up by 6 because they were afraid of what Russell Wilson would do getting the ball back on his 5. And he did, went the length of the field. But it's just interesting. If you're not going to have elite players and you have an average quarterback whose best strength is an intangible, well, you better have somebody who's a genius at unlocking things that set him up for success. Yet the Patriots basically hired Dumb and Dumber to do that job.
I mean, even Tom Brady, had Rob Gronkowski, or he had Wes Welker, or he had Julian Edelman, or he had, go on down the list. There was maybe a couple of years where he didn't have a real star to throw to. And 06 is the easy one to bring up. Maybe most of 13 without Rob Gronkowski, but that was really the first year that Edelman exploded and became a 1,000-yard receiver. But we're talking about the best quarterback of all time. And
19.
Just remember how frustrated he was that last season here in New England, and how much, obviously there was a lot that went into that. But, I'll never forget him screaming at his receivers on the sideline in Houston when they're all on the bench there for a primetime game. And it's the frustration was evident. It was clear to anybody watching that he didn't think they had enough. And I'm not sure how much they've truly improved on that group.
Yeah, they're worse now than they were then. James White's gone. Julian Edelman's gone. They were literally about 80% of the offense at that time. But Tom Brady's gone too. And since he's been gone, the Patriots have struggled to find their post-Brady identity, even though they had really good footing in 2021 in trying to establish their identity, and they were on the right track. They took a major step back, as we all know, in 2022. So I did ask last week Matt Slater about the Patriots' identity and how they're going to find it, because last year was such an outlier, situationally moronic, poorly coached, porous special teams, toxicity, dysfunction, general mistrust I felt around this team. But they're trying to get a little bit of a palate cleanser. And despite the fact that a lot of this pod has talked about depth and personnel problems, I do think that the arrow's pointing up. Here's what Matt Slater had to say last week when I asked him about this team's identity.
I do think we are still forging it a bit. Obviously, we've gone through a seismic change, and that's no mystery to anyone. A big part of the reason that we had continuity and stability, that changed in the last few years. So I think we have to reach within ourselves and find out, what are the core principles that we're going to adhere to, no matter who's on the team, no matter what the situation, no matter what our record is, no matter what, the circumstances may be. And, I'd like to think that hard work, commitment, selflessness, all of those things still exist within our organization. we're just doing it with different guys. And sometimes that takes time. I think for a lot of us in our culture, we're so hyper-focused on the end goal that we try to rush through the process. But I think the process is so very important because it equips you and it teaches you and it gives you the things that you lack. So I think the last few years have been a time of equipping, of us learning through some low points. And hopefully on the other side of it, we gain the things that we've lacked and we come out better for it on the other side.
Phil, in a column I wrote for NBCSportsBoston.com, I mentioned that this team needed an enema last year and a palate cleanser. I do feel as if it's clean at both ends right now. There's problems, there's issues, there's things to wring our hands about, but I think the tenor around the team is pretty good right now.
I would agree. And so much of the tenor being off last year, I think, was just because of buy-in. It wasn't just the decision. It was the buy-in or lack thereof that resulted from that decision from Bill Belichick last year. You don't have that now. You have a real teacher, a real coach with real experience on the offensive side of the ball to lead half your team. And the half that, generally speaking, in today's game wins these games. So that has to be a huge part of it. And I think they have, Tom, I do think they have good people at leadership positions in that locker room.
Mm-hmm.
Start with the guy that we just heard from, Matthew Slater, David Andrews, Hunter Henry, Mac Jones. I put in this group. These guys care about their sport, about their team, about their performance. And I think they, for the most part, have their heads on straight. And so, there is something building here. Obviously, we'll always come back to, what does that mean record-wise? What kind of team can they be? But if you're just focused on that, maybe there are enough of these guys that, with enough development from some of the others and with a tweak or two or an addition or two, they do become, in whether it's this year, next year, the year after that, it becomes the team, the contending team that we've gotten used to watching here.
It is interesting because, a guy like Matt Slater is straight shooting, veteran, and cognizant of it. The Patriots have moved away from their DNA of being bloodlessly efficient, a whole that's greater than the sum of its parts. I never know if I get that right. But a team that can pull an upset at any time that you don't want to deal with. I did that story today, and they're 9-15 in 24 games since 2019 after December 1st. Let me do that again. In 24 games since 2019, in the games that are played, Jesus, can you spit it out, boy? They're 9-15 in December games the last 4 seasons. How's that? That's crazy. That's not who they were. That's not who they are. They had a guy last year throw it backwards over his head. And then another guy, after he got it, he threw it back to the quarterback at the end of the game. And it was tied. That happened. Over.
So what to you is if you are the owner of this football team, what's more important for you to see this year? Just that on your details, late in the season, late in the game, know what you're doing, smart, high football IQ kind of team that you've grown used to, or a team that has some explosive potential that might still make a mistake here or there because it's young, but with some really promising, talented pieces. What would you rather have? Because I think I would, honestly, if it were me, I think I'd lean toward the latter because talent is so important. And because I think, okay, once you have enough of that, then that's when you lean on your Bill Belichick or whoever's running your franchise.
I think I would
to get them to tweak those details.
I think I'd lean towards the first because I've seen it work in my time following this team as a fan and as a media member. In 1993, when they were on the cusp of perhaps moving to St. Louis, when I had to watch a game in Southie on closed circuit television because it was blacked out locally. And there were snowbanks all along the edges of Foxborough Stadium. And Michael Timpson caught an overtime pass against, I can't remember who it was, Colts maybe, to let that team finish at 5-11 after a 1-11 start. There was a close to that season, Bill Parcells and Drew Bledsoe's first season, that made you go, holy shit, I can't wait till this team gets on the field next year. And they went 10-6 the next year. And they had a third-round pick who turned into a Hall of Fame player in Curtis Martin. And they drafted guys like Willie McGinnis. Was he 94? Yeah, I think he was. And then they went on a run. But there was a core built and building. So I want them to play like that. I want them to be a scary team to play. I want them to be a team that good teams look at. I want them to understand who they are, in that they are an underdog. I don't care what their helmet says. They're a practically bottom feeding, middle of the road, got to try harder than the other guys kind of team. They're not a destination. They're not an elite team. They can't look down their noses at anyone, regardless of that scoreboard that I'm looking at down there or the 6 banners over here. They're an okay team, maybe. They played like crap last year. So they better come with that kind of, I have something to prove, not that I'm worthy of being a Patriot or whatever, just that people think I'm gross. I'm going to try and be pretty. Anyway, that's what I think they're going to be. We got to wrap this thing up because we got to get up and do some TV, huh?
Yeah, let's wrap it up.
All right. See you guys. Over.
Bye.